Derrick Rose announced his retirement this morning on his Instagram account. So Derrick Rose leaves the game with career averages of 17.4 points per game, 45% overall from the field, 31% from three, and zero point 0.3 blocks per game, zero point 0.7 assists per game, and actually zero point 0.7 steals per game, 5.2 assists per game. My bad on that error. But his career numbers are actually pretty good, and they're impressive when you consider just how he was never the same after that devastating injury he suffered way back in the playoffs of 2012. Just I'm shocked his numbers aren't actually lower after that injury. So it shows you how skilled Derrick Rose really was to still end up with those career numbers despite that injury. One thing I'll say about Derrick is that when he entered the league, just he was a great two-way player, just a guy who was a great scorer, but also a guy who was a great defensive player. Just he could do it on both ends of the court. And when he entered the league, just he dominated all the other elite point guards. He was like king of the guards, as I would say. Just this guy had always an edge when he played the top guards. That's something I noticed during the era. I could say this as a Spurs fan. I remember whenever the Bulls would play the Spurs, that just he would give Tony Parker a lot of problems, and very few guards could bother Tony when he was in his prime. But Derrick was one of the few guys that could actually stay in front of Tony, that Tony's quick speed could not get him by him. That to me was always amazing about Derrick, how he could stick right in front of prime Tony Parker, and he didn't need help because most guards couldn't really guard Tony Parker one-on-one when he was in his prime. They always needed help from another perimeter player, to double team Parker, but Derrick could guard him one-on-one. So that's what I really remember, that despite being a quiet guy, he had a real competitive edge and competitive fire, and he always wanted to show people at his position that he was the best guard in the league. That's how competitive he was. I'll say this, that he wasn't a great playmaker. He was a good playmaker, but he wasn't a great playmaker. So I guess that's one of the flaws you could say about his game. He was he was a three-time All-Star when he entered the league. He made All-NBA first team once. He won NBA Rookie of the Year. And then the peak of his career was actually winning the league MVP way back in 2011. Ultimately, his season would come to an end, losing to the Miami Heat. I think it was like in 6 games or 5 games that year in the conference finals. But there was hope from the Bulls, despite losing to Miami, that Derrick was really young. They had years to go, and that eventually they would get over the hump when it came to dealing with Miami, that they would have the right team in place and they would get at least one title out of Derrick. Just that was the hope back then with the Bulls organization. I remember that. But unfortunately, it just never was meant to be. I think that one thing Derrick Rose's injury shows, just like in life, that you could have all the potential in the world and you could actually be doing everything to reach it, doing the right things, just taking care of yourself, just working hard, working diligently. And then out of nowhere, just some bad thing can happen to you that's out of your control, that you can just have some bad luck. And once that happens, it could just stunt your growth and derail your potential. And unfortunately, there's just nothing you can do about it. That was really the case with what happened with Derrick Rose's ACL tear injury, which happened in the 2012 playoffs against the Sixers. To me, that injury was a travesty because I think it could have been preventable had Tibbs not played him in garbage time. That to me will never make sense. I think the Bulls are up by over 20 with just a few minutes left, and he decided to still play Derrick anyways, which to me was the stupidest coaching decision ever. And one of the biggest reasons why Tibbs suffers from that reputation of being a career killer for young players, because he overplays them and plays them into the ground. But that was just a terrible injury. Some could argue that he would have still eventually blew out his ACL because just the way he played, he was a athletic guard, and those types of guards usually tend to have severe knee injuries eventually. I can see how that goes, but still, it was really, really, really a travesty that Derrick's career got derailed by that one moment, because after that happened, he was never the same again, to be honest. Just just he was never an elite player again. He did have some years where I would say he was decent, but he was never really great again. So that was an unfortunate thing. Also, I think it destroyed his psyche, that injury. Just it messed him up mentally as he saw all the crazy things that happened with him off the court after that injury. So to me, that injury was really sad. Just it really ruined what could have been a special career, a great career. But I would say this, Derrick probably will get into the Hall of Fame despite not having accomplished much after that injury happened. Just getting a league MVP probably gets you in the Hall of Fame. That's what I'm assuming. So I think he'll get in one of these years. Probably not immediately, but then again, he could get in 2028 depending on how weak that class is. The NBA is always looking for publicity. And if you look at the guys that get in today, I think he's probably a shoe-in. So, yeah, I think he'll probably get into the Hall of Fame, but it's just his career to me will always be known as stunted dreams, really, or stunted growth, as you can say. That's what I think about it when I think about Derrick's career. That's all I have to say.